about visionary leaders, setting visionary type goals, what springs to mind? Think about some words that might spring to mind and put them in the chat. If you think of somebody that's a visionary, it might be, I don't know, somebody famous, somebody you know already. What is it about them that you think, wow, visionary? Entrepreneur, yes. Now that could be entrepreneurial within your own business, and a courageous, thinking outside the box, enterprise mindset. Brilliant. So it sounds to me as though what you're defining is something that doesn't really have a limit or a border as such. It's expansive, it's perhaps innovative, it's creative. So something that's what we haven't talked about is about detailed or planned. Now, that doesn't mean if you're more of a detailed planning person, you can't be visionary. You can, and I'll talk a bit about personality styles later, but that sounds as though it's thinking outside the box. Lighthouse, I love that word. I absolutely love that word. I used to work a lot in change management in pharmaceuticals, change management communications, and we would use that word a lot. We would find people in the organisation, I don't know if this might sound familiar, we would find people in the organisation who were lighthouses, and they could be visionary for the change we wanted to move through. So thank you for that. Right, let me just navigate my slides. Now then, we all know this guy. We're all going to live in Mars. Mars is going to be our next home once the sun burns out. Don't worry, it's not for like billions and billions of years. I'm not trying to depress you, but that is absolutely out the box visionary thinking. Now, we don't always have to agree with, obviously it's Elon Musk's views or viewpoints on certain things. We might do, but do you remember when many years ago people saying go to the moon? That's never going to happen. You're crazy. And we might think that now about some of the ideas of this particularly visionary thinker, but who knows? They just really think very far into the future, that real, beyond our world visionary thinking. So you can have visionary leaders in many different aspects of society, of course. And sometimes, the things that seem like, how are we going to do that? You might have had it in a business. Hang on a minute, we're going to do this in this business, in this climate. And actually it's worked. I'll give you an example. I was working with somebody in sales in pharmaceuticals. In a particular, he was a key account manager in a territory, and he couldn't get buy-in for his idea around the fact that he thought there was X million growth in an area of the UK which had been typically quite modest in terms of growth, and he was sort of ignored and in meetings, and actually it was about how he articulated what he said. But that person who wasn't being listened to, because in a room full of key account managers and salespeople, it was a very noisy meeting, quite boisterous in a way, and he couldn't get himself heard sometimes. He was a detailed planner, but he was still visionary, because he had an idea that nobody else had thought of that increased his sales massively, and it was right under his nose. It was almost very simple, that it was easy to ignore, but he had the vision to have a look into that and to refuse to be sort of dissuaded. And so we worked on his communications and how to influence. So there's many different ways and types you can be visionary. So for example, we talked about some of those words, and creativity, innovation, expansion, lighthouses, drive, innovation, inspiration. Now you can learn to have some of these attributes. Some people have them naturally. It's almost like an aftershave or a perfume. It's in a bottle. You think, I don't know how they do it. They've just got it. And that's probably the result of hours and hours of self-development, of reading books, podcasts, coaching, development, training courses, if it hasn't come naturally. So you can learn over time to be your own style of visionary. You don't always have to be the loudest person in the room. I've seen people that are very quietly spoken, very methodical, who are still visionary leaders, because when they say something, it's like a mic drop. So I just wanted to, I promised to talk about personality styles. There are many, many different personality styles and behaviors at work. So as you can, a couple of examples here, you can see that there can be different types of personalities that are visionary leaders. Now, here's somebody from more of a social impact perspective, Malala Yousafzai, which some of you may know. She's written books, but she has been a absolutely trailblazing social advocate for gender equality. And if you haven't read about some of her experiences, she's from Pakistan. She's a global speaker, well known. And Elon Musk, Malala, different personality types, different baseline characteristics, but still in their own authentic way being visionary. So, the power of visionary planning. And if you've got more that you would like to add to this, I'd love to hear from you. Now, can you imagine having a boat or a ship that had no rudder? Where would that boat be going? It could be going anywhere, like that cork bobbing on the ocean. It could be going round in circles. With the weather we've had in the UK, I dread to think where it would be going. But you would be taken on the tides of the ocean. You would actually be the passenger and not the pilot of your own life, your own career, and helping shape the experience of your team, shape the direction of your organisation. So the power of visionary planning is that it provides us with direction and focus. It allows for innovation and creativity. It allows for risk with some mitigation, and I'll come on to that in a minute. It can improve decision making, and it increases motivation and engagement with the team. Now, you might be, I see different people at different stages of their career in leadership. Leadership doesn't always mean the box you fit in on an organization chart at all. It doesn't always mean or equate to leading a team, because the world of business is very, very different today, and organizations are shaped very, very differently. It might be you're on an agile project work stream, but you are leading it, or you're a key stakeholder. It might be you're a team member and you want to become somebody that is the visionary for that team, perhaps the why thinker, the challenger, the ideas person, because perhaps your team operate in a different way and you want to inject all of this into your team. Perhaps you are a leader and you're thinking, I was talking to somebody this morning who I'm coaching to become a CEO of the organization in a point in time. And it's really about embracing this idea of being a visionary as part of your DNA as a CEO. It's not, I wasn't talking to her about how to delegate, but really having a wider lens for her leadership. And also, as a CEO today, for example, you might be looking at social impact. When you're operating across countries where there may be different issues brewing. So it can be for anyone at any time in your career, of any personality. Now, can you think of any other benefits of visionary planning? And if you are in a leadership role, and my definition of leadership is it's a mindset. My definition of leadership is about how you live your life. It's not 3 goals on a piece of paper that you discuss once a year. It's about actually the way you do things is the way you do things. It's about being your own leader. So that's why I'm talking about this being personal and professional. For me, it's an ongoing word. It's a mindset. It's perhaps the example you want to set to your children. It's perhaps how you want to show up as a coach in your local sports club. Yes, we're talking about organizations and teams. So it's about what you bring to that as a team member, deciding to show up and embrace this mindset now. So It's a soft landing if you want to progress your career higher up an organization or with a broader scope. So you give that clarity, direction, and focus either for your life, your team, or your organization. And I'll repeat it again, the way you do things is the way you do things. The way you show up is the way you show up. So if you want to be more visionary, then listen to this webinar again, book a call, and I can go through some of the specifics of your details. It helps you improve decision making because you're thinking big, and then you can bring it in if you need to. And I'll come on to that in a bit. It stimulates innovation and creativity. It's looking at challenges. How can we turn them into solutions? If you're a visionary, it gives that permission and that groundwork for improved decision making within your team, motivation, engagement. The amount of people that I see leaving organizations, and I'm not talking about one person in a team, I'm talking about multiple people from an organization leaving because they're feeling micromanaged, they're feeling compressed. We need to start big and then move in. And again, you can apply this to your personal life, but really I'm focusing on professional, organizational pieces as we go through this. Can you tell me how it felt when you encountered somebody, either in a hobby, your professional life, your personal life, that squashed you? How did that feel? Could you put a word in the chat? I know for me, I felt squashed. I felt squashed. I felt compressed. I felt less than. Because if you're leading a team, some people will want to express, and as a leader, you do not have to come up with all the ideas. You do not need to know all the answers. In fact, showing that humility and humbleness, if that's a word, is really endearing to people. So we've got a couple of words here. Demotivated, small. Yeah, absolutely. Because I bet you, everybody, because you're on this call, you're somebody that is visionary already. You're thinking about it, you're doing it, you're living it. So absolutely. And we don't want our teams to feel like that. If you want to take it to the personal level, we don't want our families to feel like that. We want people to feel empowered. If we set that framework for our team and we set our goals in a way that's aligned to that bigger picture, that's actually looking at what's happening in the outside world, what's happening that we need to be aware of and move towards in the future. I know some organizations do this really, really well. Some do not. Same with leaders. Now, I know the picture's a little bit fuzzy here. That's because I've taken it from a report that I use. So this is a very simple model. It's the VAE. So it's vision, alignment, execution, and it's from the work of leaders. It's a diagnostic report that I use, which really compares individuals, not comparison in a bad way. It compares you to 300 of the world's most successful leaders, and it looks at what are the attributes that they have in terms of the vision, alignment, and execution of a strategy, which is typically the work of a leader. If we just strip it down into something, I know there's 100 different models, 100 plus, but I like this one because it's simple. So you can see it all starts with vision. That's why I'm saying starting big is really important. If you start small with your goals, you've got nowhere left to go, just smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And it might be as well, for example, you spot someone in your team who is that visionary person that can really help kick this off if that's something you don't feel comfortable with. But the VAE model is really that three pieces of the pie there in terms of how you act as a leader and how you get your strategy from the beginning, from its birth, its fruition, all the way through to the execution. Now, in this report, what happens is it gives you the different parameters and behaviors of those 300 most successful leaders in the world, and it looks at a sliding scale. Where are you in terms of entrepreneurial thinking? It gives us a scale and it tells us these are the areas we need to really perhaps increase to be more inspirational in vision. Very often I see reports where the vision scores are lower than the execution and the alignment. And we need to look at that innovation, allowing people to express their ideas, being open to ideas. That's part of that visionary piece. So it gives you really good sliding scales for each of these three pieces of the pie: areas for improvement, areas for growth, and what you're doing well already. And actually, what I found when doing these reports for many, many years now, we're all very good at execution. Execution always comes up as the area with the least amount of challenges, whereas vision and alignment tend to be a couple of areas we need to work on. Because I think that bold thinking, sometimes it doesn't feel so rewarded in organizations, which is often why a lot of people leave or set up their own business. But we're very good at execution. We're very good at doing, I think, and very good at solutionizing. So don't worry if you feel you need to be a bit more visionary. You're not on your own, but it's an absolutely fantastic report. If you'd like more details, book a call, get in touch, DM me on LinkedIn. So this is what I hear from my clients in terms of, I've been told I need to expand my vision. I need to expand the way I think. I need to be more strategic. And these are some of the problems I find that my clients are dealing with. These are some of the missing attributes, if you like, the missing mindsets. I'm not going to read through all of them, but as you can see, communication is in there. One of the areas I see a lot, and I think it aligns to that previous slide where I talked about us all being very good at being busy. We can be busy fools. Sorry, I'm not calling anyone a fool, but we can be busy fools. If you agree, put a yes in the chat. If you don't, just say, no, Sarah, I don't. We're very good at doing, because I think our society rewards results. Yes, we have to work for results, but we also have to look at failures and missteps and reframe them. We're busy human beings, aren't we? We like to be busy. Yeah, thank you. A lot of agreement there. And we need to just take a step back, and it's not always about doing. So, that short-term focus, we need to sort of almost, there's a really nice technique that I use, and it sounds a bit different, but it's a mindset technique. I always, when I'm talking to my clients, we're working through how to really break into that visionary mindset. If that's something they want to do and inspire people and have those visionary goals in place, I always say, sit like this. Try it, in fact, sit like this, hunched over. How does that feel? Disempowering. But posturally, you're telling your body, wow, I feel empowered. So I always think about during interactions and when people are setting goals, does this feel empowering or does it feel disempowering? What's your body telling you, this or this? And look up, posturally, have your shoulders down. And I just find the body language piece really helps people to get into that mindset of visionary thinking, looking at what do some of these people that are really well known do. Now, you might not want to beg, steal and borrow from Elon Musk. I was talking more about how he sees the world, how he views the world and beyond. But there might be people that you do want to beg, steal and borrow from. So sometimes we can get really busy prioritizing immediate tasks and neglecting the long-term strategic planning, because sometimes it's the short term that gets rewarded. It's the 1 year plan, isn't it? How much in sales did you do? How many new subscriptions did you manage to retain? Sometimes for us, it can feel very nebulous, very large. It's too big and I'm scared of failing. That means we're scared of avoiding taking risks, and we are not open to embracing uncertainty. And that can really stifle innovation and growth. And when we stifle that within a team, it stifles the team. And if you notice that you've got team members that have suddenly stopped speaking up, offering ideas, probably there's too much of this short-term focus. Now, that is necessary, of course. And I'm not saying go off in a completely different direction without thinking about it first, but just don't allow yourself to go there. Allow yourself to go there, because if you look at vision, alignment, execution, if we think about strategy, you're going to start big. you're going to need to get buy-in from your organization and your team, or your team hopefully will be involved in the vision. They will be involved so they feel some ownership of it. And you'll build that alignment. You'll speak to stakeholders in the business. You'll get their views of, wow, I didn't think about that in terms of if we move in this direction, that's something to think about. And then the execution. Visionary thinking can still come in the execution, because as you're executing a plan, which we're all quite good at, then you might find there's a blocker or something changes in the world that means, hang on a minute, we need to rework the vision. So there's safeguards in there. If you follow that process of vision, alignment, execution, and know your strengths and weaknesses, speak to stakeholders, you're not going to completely fail. The only way we completely fail is by not thinking big enough sometimes and not listening to other people. So here are some of the areas that I find really stymie people's ability to set these visionary goals and become a visionary leader. As you can see, he's facing a brick wall. Now, why have I got a picture of a ladder on here? Because sometimes we can have goals, and I like to set my vision a few years in advance because that gives me a direction of travel. Will things change along the way that I cannot control? Yes. For example, we might be in lockdown for 2.5 years. Anyone remember that? If you do, put a yes, or if you've forgotten it or you want to forget it, just say, oh, no. But we were in lockdown for a long time. Who could have actually foreseen that? But I still have a vision. I adapt it, I review it every year, because I know ultimately what's important to me, Sarah, and my career and what I do during my week, when I'm at work, when I'm working, is super important. And my goal to be self-employed started when I was about 20, 21, and I had a plan that I worked to. Could I have got there quicker? Possibly, but there were other things in my life that I was doing, like traveling, for example, doing all sorts of mad scuba diving and cave diving, that were taking up my time, willingly so. But I had that plan, and sometimes I just had to adjust the timings, the resources that I would need. And the ladder is there because what we don't want to do is set off on our path with our team, with our organisation, with ourselves, and then look back on it in a few years' time and go, oh, my ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. Or in this case, it's very wobbly because there's no wall. Or my ladder is leaning against somebody else's wall. I've lived my life completely according to what somebody else wanted. I forgot myself. I've worked in an organisation that doesn't meet my values or my ethics or how I want to show up at work. And I've really over tolerated certain things to adapt in this environment. I don't know if that sounds familiar or you've been through that. I know sometimes I have, and I would always decide what my next move was and have my next 1 to 2 moves in place, whether that be for my team, my organisation, or for myself, because I'd want to start moving now. If that's where I want to be in 2 years, I want to start laying the groundwork. And what we don't want to do is be in a position where that ladder doesn't even belong to us, that we are that cork bobbing in the ocean, that we've allowed our short-term focus as a team leader to really mean we've done all of this, but we've missed this. Oh my goodness. So, for example, there are lots of technology companies that we can all think of that just haven't been able to move with the pace of change. Who am I thinking of? I don't want to name names, but there's companies that I know who are they've just missed it completely. If you can think of any companies or organizations, and this isn't a criticism, because sometimes they rebound back and reinvent themselves, and sometimes it's just every company has its day, and sometimes that's the right thing to do. Can you think of any companies or organizations where they were lighthouses, they were visionary thinkers, and perhaps they just missed it on some level by not embracing innovation. The ladder was against the wrong wall. So we really need, for our goals, to have that bigger picture view. If you're running a team, you might have a mixture of people in your team who are very introvert and extrovert. Get them involved. Get them involved in setting your vision, because over 99% of an organization's problems and challenges are not understood by leadership. That's a statistic that I often quote. I can't remember the source. If you're really interested, drop me a note, drop me a message, and I'll dig it out for you. But over 99% of an organization's challenges are not understood by leadership. Who understands it? The people working in your team. And there will be people in your team who are bursting to innovate, who are bursting to try something different, who will have the answers to your problems. I worked in an organization once, and there was this whole work stream on why a particular site in a logistics distribution center, why was there so much sickness? Why was the delivery rates, the key performance indicators, dropping? And if you know anything about logistics and supply chain, they usually have to be about 99, 98, 99 plus. And management tried to solve the problem. They were solving the wrong problem. So I went and conducted a team workshop with the team locally, and it was something very fixable, different, but fixable. That all we needed to do was listen and get those ideas from the team. They knew exactly what the problem was. So these are some of the reasons why having that vision as a team is really important. Listening. The slide previously talked about emotional intelligence. If you'd like a report on what your emotional intelligence reads like, then drop me a line, get in touch, drop me a note on LinkedIn, because I have something that measures your emotional quotient. These are the results of not thinking big enough, not being visionary enough. There are organisations, I really don't want to mention names, but I've got a couple on the tip of my tongue, that have wasted profits, have lost profits. In fact, if you think about one, Kodak, I know people that used to work at Kodak. It was a big company, lots of offices around here. It had a great culture, people loved it. But again, they didn't really move with the times. They didn't really think or allow that time to explore the vision. And by the time they did, it was probably too late, because other disruptors had entered the marketplace. So these are some of the implication. We're here, but it's the wrong here. My ladder's on the wrong wall. I think we talked about this, about how would your team feel if you felt disempowered. Tell me how it feels when you're with a leader that gives you that space to articulate, visionate. I've just made that word up, by the way. I don't know if it exists. How does it feel when you have a leader that thinks big? Is that something you like? Oh, here we go. Thank you for the examples. Nokia, that was the one I was thinking of as well. Do you remember those phones? BlackBerry. Oh my goodness, I used to love my BlackBerry. In fact, I still miss my BlackBerry. Yes, I did have a BlackBerry back in the day, as they say. I loved it, my little keyboard. VW, yeah, thank you. And sometimes as well, with this visionary piece, it can also be we've failed to not spot a crisis or an issue. We've talked about listening to the team. What about listening to consumers, customers? What about looking at repeated issues? There are so many examples of companies, I think Toyota for a while, that just kept missing and not listening and not looking at where the data was coming from different parts of the business, that led to so many safety issues. But I know for me, I kind of feel alive. I remember now experiences that I had 20 years ago with inspirational leaders. So absolutely, super important. Now, quick case study. I'll just go through it quickly. I won't read everything because it's all here on the slide. If you would like a copy of the slides, I can send them to you I don't usually send them out, but I'm happy to. So just drop me a note on here, drop me a message. I think we're all connected on LinkedIn. Now, I was working with a very, very senior director, and she hadn't, the organization had been on a change journey. Have we all been there? Give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat if you've been in an organization where there's change upon change upon change upon change, draining, or there's change upon change upon change upon change, nothing changes. So there were a lot of conflicts in the team, lack of performance, and she just lost her way. We're only humans. We can lose our way personally. We can lose our marriages, can't we? Lose our way personally, professionally, along the way with the busyness of life, the way that life is so changing and uncertain these days. And sometimes you just need somebody to kind of put the I was going to say the spark plugs, but you know when your battery in your car goes, what are they called? Jump leads. Sorry, the jump leads. You need someone to externally to put in the jump leads and help you, because where she was going, her career wasn't going in the right way at all. She was not happy. There was a lot of change. She had got bogged down in a lot of change, conflict, and all we needed to do was like open the curtains again, open the window. Who are you? Your values? What's important to you? Where do you want to be in a few years' time? Okay, in the whole map of your life, which is an exercise I do with my clients, where does your career fit in? What is it you really love? And both personally, professionally, very, very interested in patient advocacy, politics. So moved into a role that really helped her express and include within that government affairs, patient advocacy. And the team that she worked with absolutely loved her energy. When I look at that person that I saw a few months ago to where she is now, it's two different people. I also worked with somebody who was an absolutely awesome sales representative, no, regional account manager, regional business manager for pharma, change, restructure, completely lost his way. And when I met him, it was like, oh, because I knew him, I don't recognize you at the moment. Look really sad, look really drained, looked unhappy, posture like this. Remember that posture exercise I talked about? Within 3 months, wow, it was like, who needs a face pack when you can have coaching? Because he looked younger, more vibrant, more energy, because we'd moved him into a role where everything seemed so, what's the word, desperate, cloudy. We worked out a navigation plan for him to move into a role that was a coaching role, sales coaching in the organization. Because it was like, tell me what really drives you. When you're in the right role, then the visionary leadership will follow, and the team, you'll have a really inspired and motivated team. So here's some more examples. I won't go through them now, in terms of where we can lose ourselves in the busyness of our day life. And for me, there's a process that I use that I will go through now. And similar to what I was talking about before, I love it because it's like seeing a different person. And people often say to me, how do you have so much energy? It's because I love what I do. I love helping people. I love helping my clients, and that brings with it a natural energy. So that disempowered to empowered feeling. Okay, here's some words that my clients have left me, just so you can see it's not just me saying this, talking about these case studies. These are on LinkedIn, these are on Google. And on my journey, I won't go too much into it because some of you might have seen this slide before. These are some of the organizations I've worked with. I've coached teams and organizations and run workshops across accountancy, legal, fintech, consumer and retail, pharma, healthcare. And I can tell you, I know how it feels being in front of a leader that isn't very inspiring. And even though it's not always, you can learn to be inspiring and visionary, but it does feel, like we talked about before, disempowering. And it's just, oh, I can't stay here, because I think people like to feel that they have freedom to express. We all want to be seen and heard and appreciated. And when it's very much into that very deep executional level all the time, we're missing a trick. So are you in execution mode a bit too much? Think big. If you use the VAE system, you can't go wrong. So let's talk about goals now. So there's a three-step process I like to use, and I'm going to fess up. This is step 1 and 2, but I'm going to fess up. It's not my process because it's something we used to use in scuba diving, in technical diving. It's called assess, plan, and act. Because sometimes, as I talked about with the vision, we don't want to talk about a vision and go, yeah, that's absolutely right. We want to think about it to align with people before we execute. So before we act, yeah, let's think big. Let's go for it. Let's encourage our team to think big. There was a fantastic workshop I went to, and it was run by some Dutch facilitators, and it was called Omdenken. My Dutch isn't great, but I think it means turning everything upside down, removing those barriers. But I use this process of assess, plan, act. So it's like, let's have a look. Where are you now? And then how can we move you forward quickly? And I do this in terms of coaching programs with teams, with organizations. We work on their vision, their mission, their values, how they work together, how are they going to bring in innovation and visionary thinking to the team. And that falls into this assess, plan, and act piece. I won't read through all of these, but as I mentioned before, is your ladder against the right wall as a team? Have you got the right insights to develop your vision? Don't worry about having to test it. We're not at that phase yet, but visionary goals. What if we did this? There are disruptors in sectors that you don't work in where you can beg, steal, and borrow some of their ideas, because there is a saying that there is no such thing as a new idea. Not sure I believe that, but anyway. So have your long-term goals, have your vision in place, whether that's for your team, for yourself. What's your purpose? What's your values? How does that align to, so if we talk about that personally, how does that align to your career, your business vision? Are you working in an organization, or are you running a business or a team that aligns to the values of the people in it? Does the business or sector you're working in align to the values that you believe in? I've worked a lot in pharmaceuticals and healthcare. Why? Because it is something I'm really passionate about, that we live in a complex society, and I feel that people have the right to healthcare that they deserve, for all the hard work we put in. And it's something I'm really passionate about, and it brings out that attribute of listening and empathy, and really putting myself in somebody else's shoes that I love. And I was doing roles in government affairs as well. That brought some challenge and influence in it, so I loved it. It aligned to me perfectly. If I look at my career choices, they completely make sense. What excites you? Don't think of your career, if your team or your business, as a pair of scales. What are you tolerating? What's the toleration scale telling you? Because sometimes, there are going to be challenges. They can help us grow. We're not going to like everything. Where's the scale though? Because I've seen people where their over toleration scale is like, bang, it's on the floor. And that's going too far. That's when I get people coming to me with stress and burnout. And I'm sure that you've maybe experienced that yourself, and I don't want you to experience that. So make sure you're aligned in the right direction in the first place. So we're looking at assess and plan. I talk here about the psychological tools. Those are some of the psychometric tools that I use. I use values maps. I use different pieces to look at your career map, your life map, so that we get the bigger picture and break it down. I use similar exercises for team workshops. I've got tools on emotional intelligence, the work of leaders report I talked about, that can help you, because then we've got some really nice data to work with and to see, how do I compare against the most successful leaders in the world when we're talking about the work of leaders. So yeah, and then act. How do we do that? These are the things we need to work on. If you remember the stuff that was missing before, this is what we need to learn to do. We're communicating all the time, whether we know it or not, with the expressions on our face, the body language that we use, the way that we show up. And none of us are perfect. We're going to have good days, bad days, and everything in between. How are you communicating in your organization, up, down, and across? What do you want people to think about you as they shut the door on a team? What do you want them to say? Wow, Sandra's really inspirational. Oliver's really inspirational, really visionary. I love his ideas. Or you might not be coming up with the ideas. It's about setting the groundwork and the culture and the framework to allow that to happen. So you're not missing out. And so you can break them down and really have that direction in place. Collaboration. As a leader, as I mentioned, we do not need to have all the answers. If we try and do that, we'll be going around in circles. I don't want you to get stuck in your echo chamber. Speak to coaches, speak to consultants, speak to people at networking, troubleshoot it with people, collaborate internally. Go and speak to people that you've never spoken to in your life. Because I know when I was presenting my plans, the best feedback I got were from people who weren't even in my functional area. It was like, wow, I'd never really thought about it like that because I've only got my own lens of the world. So whoever it is, collaborate, get more feedback. Your team is your greatest asset. Get feedback. That's going to help you grow. It will help your team grow. So allow also your team to express. You're not alone. This is not something you have to do alone. And if you're a bit worried about thinking big, it's like, don't know if that's me. Have I got to be somebody I'm not? No, you don't. You can harness exactly who you are in an authentic way and still become a visionary leader and a visionary goal setter. So remember, I talked about this, the 3 pieces of the pie, VAE. And remember, look at it, it's a continuous circle. So there's always going to be room to innovate, grow, learn, and adapt. Remember, this is what people sometimes fear. And with that comes the short-term focus, the demotivated team, the lack of career progress. If you're in an organisation at the moment, I understand this year's been quite changeable. I understand there's been a lot of restructuring. I understand we can get tired this time of year, particularly if you've got December year end. I understand that, but make sure you're giving that yourself that time to not just be busy back to back. It's, let's not get trapped into that short-term focus. There's room for that. That's what your quarterly reviews are for, your quarterly business plans or your 1-year business plan. But we really need to be thinking further out from that, from our career, from our goals that are personal and professional, and also for our team. And it isn't about being somebody you're not. If you're nervous about that, or if you're more introvert, it's being about a fantastic listener. One of the most inspirational leaders I ever worked with didn't say a lot, but when he did, it mattered, and he had gravitas despite being quite introvert. Why are these so important? What does visionary planning look like? If you feel you can think of any other words, then feel free to put them in the chat. This is what visionary planning and goals are. They're not about daily tasks. Yes, we need to break them down. Yes, they still need to be measurable. Yes, they still need to be time bound, but they must be aligned to our values. They must be aligned to our purpose. We must be flexible, but boldness, ambition, do you know what? If I was really scared, what would I do? If I had no choice, what would I do? Right. Let's set that bold goal as a team. It's a mindset piece. Have a look back at your life, the last few years, however you want. Have you had some setbacks? Yes, I'm assuming. Where are you now with those setbacks? I'm sure you've moved on. Life is going to throw stuff at us, whether we like it or not. We cannot control that. So it's about how do we ride those storms and just look back and see how far you've come. We forget to do that. So here's a link, book a call, get in touch. I'd love to help you work on the visionary piece. We can look at the Work of Leaders report, which gives you your leadership diagnostic compared to those leaders who are deemed and measured as successful over the decades, over the years. I'll send you the recording and a free checklist, and feel free to book a strategy call. WhatsApp me with any questions. And if I don't see you on a workshop soon on LinkedIn or somewhere else. I'd like to wish you all the best for what remains of 2024 and a really, really prosperous and successful and visionary 2025. So look out for the recording and the links and have a great rest of the day. Take care.